A new warning tonight about the scope of a massive cyber attack.
Already believed to be the largest cyber attack on our government.
America under virtual invasion. That's what Senator Dick Durbin is calling a massive Russian cyber attack on U.S. government agencies.
It's been over 4 years since the Solarwinds hack, yet its ripple effects continue to shape cybersecurity practices and regulatory actions. On October 22, 2024, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) announced settlements of $7 million with 4 technology companies over allegations of misleading disclosures related to the Solarwinds hack. But what is going on and what really happened? Let's uncover the full story. It all started in December 2020, the month America missed its greatest cyber attack. Amid the turbulence of a contested US presidential election, while political chaos consumed the nation, a stealthy and sophisticated cyber espionage campaign breached Fortune 500 companies and critical government agencies. This unprecedented attack not only slipped under the radar, but also strained relationships between global superpowers, leaving experts warning of even greater threats to come. It was an ordinary day at FireEye, a well-known cybersecurity firm, but that all changed when a member of the security team noticed something unusual. A new unknown device had been registered to an employee for two-factor authentication, an essential process that adds a layer of security by requiring a unique code sent to a registered device. The team contacted the employee, who confirmed no new devices had been added. This raised an alarming realization. Someone outside had gained access. For a company dedicated to protecting others from cyber attacks, discovering a breach within their own network was a concerning discovery. The attackers had not only infiltrated FireEye's systems, but also stolen a critical set of penetration testing tools. These tools, said to replicate some of the most sophisticated hacking tools in the world, if misused, could uncover vulnerabilities in countless organizations. Then, FireEye's CEO, Kevin Mandia, later described the breach in an NPR interview as the breach I was always worried about. FireEye's team immediately launched an investigation, collaborating with the FBI and Microsoft. By December 11th, they had traced the breach to its origin source, a network monitoring tool called Orion, developed by Solarwinds. Somewhere within updates released between March and June 2020, attackers had added 4,000 lines of malicious code, granting them backdoor access to organizations that used the software. The attack, referred to as Sunburst by FireEye and Solarigate by Microsoft, was classified as a supply chain attack, a tactic in which hackers compromise a trusted third-party vendor to access its customers. Investigators later attributed the breach to UNC 2452, a state-sponsored group, though their exact affiliation remained unclear. By December 13th, FireEye, Solarwinds, and the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency (CISA) issued public statements detailing the breach's extensive scope. More than 18,000 organizations, including Fortune 500 companies and US government agencies, had unknowingly installed compromised updates, granting attackers access to their systems. But the most concerning discovery was still ahead. While initial findings suggested the attack began in March 2020, further investigation revealed that its origins stretched much further back, raising serious questions about what the attackers had accessed, stolen, and intended to do. A traditional supply chain involves multiple stages, from raw material sourcing to delivering the final product to consumers. If any part of the chain is compromised, the entire system can be affected. Software development follows a similar structure involving planning, sourcing code, internally or externally, distribution, and post-purchase maintenance. A supply chain attack exploits the weakest link in this chain, targeting trusted third-party vendors to infiltrate more secure systems downstream. These attacks are difficult to prevent due to the vast number of entities involved, each with varying levels of security. In the case of Sunburst, Solarwinds was the trusted third party. Their flagship product, Orion, provided organizations with tools to monitor and manage their IT networks, offering visibility and control over devices like routers, switches, servers, and firewalls. To perform these tasks, Orion required a privileged role, creating a foundation of trust between the platform and the devices it managed. This trust, essential to the supply chain, became the attacker's entry point. By embedding 4,000 lines of malicious code in software updates released between March and June 2020, they created a Trojan horse that implanted backdoors into organization systems. Solarwinds had 300,000 customers at the time, with 33,000 actively using Orion. Of those, 18,000 downloaded the compromised updates. Fortunately, the attack was highly targeted. Simply downloading the update wasn't enough. It had to be installed, deployed, and connected to the internet for the backdoor to activate. Even with 18,000 potential entry points, manual intervention was required to exploit each victim, limiting the scope of the attack. Solarwinds' public display of its customer list, which included 425 US Fortune 500 companies, military branches, and key government agencies, likely guided the attackers in selecting high-value targets. Following the breach, this list was removed from their website, raising questions about the risks of openly sharing such sensitive client information.
I think, Margaret, it's important to note, everybody says this is potentially the biggest intrusion in our history. The reality is the blast radius for this, I kind of explain it with a funnel. It's true that over 300,000 companies use SolarWinds, but you come down from that total number down to about 18,000 or so companies that actually had the backdoor or malicious code on the network. And then you come down to the next part. It's probably only about 50 organizations or companies, somewhere in that zone, that's genuinely impacted by the threat.
The group behind the Solarwinds hack has been given various names: UNC 2452 by FireEye, Dark Halo by Volexity, Solarigate by Microsoft, and others. But it turns out their operation, defined by careful planning and technical skill, started earlier than initially reported. In December 2020, initial reports suggested the attackers gained access between March and June of that year, aligning with the deployment of malicious updates. Later, SolarWinds CEO Sudhakar Ramakrishna disclosed that investigations had traced the activity back to September 2019, with evidence of reconnaissance as early as January 2019. This means the attackers remained undetected for almost 2 years.
It was a very difficult thing to uncover. But as we've been looking back into our history, and we have stumbled upon, and as is the case with many investigations, some old configuration of code where we were able to track down what exactly the attackers did. And this was, to give you a perspective, we were assessing hundreds of terabytes of data and thousands of build systems, virtual build systems across the environment, just to give you a perspective. And what we have found more recently is that the attackers may have been in our environment as early as January 2019. We published, obviously, that it was in the September-October timeframe, but as we look back, they were doing very early recon activities in January of 2019, which explains, I would say, what they were able to do in September, October of 2019 as well.
The attack took advantage of the trust placed in SolarWinds' Orion platform, a widely used IT management tool. The attackers introduced Sunspot malware into Orion's development process, replacing clean source code with malicious code during software compilation. This went undetected during audits and became part of legitimate updates, installing a backdoor known as Sunburst into client networks. Sunburst remained dormant for 12 to 14 days before disabling antivirus tools and reaching out to a command and control C2 server. It gathered system data to identify high-value targets and decided whether to stay inactive, act discreetly, or escalate operations. For chosen targets, the attackers conducted manual hands-on keyboard activities to escalate privileges, steal credentials, and deploy additional malware, Teardrop and Raindrop, which delivered Cobalt Strike beacons to enable further exploitation. The attackers effectively avoided detection during the SolarWinds hack by employing various advanced techniques. One such method was DNS-based evasion, where the malware communicated only with domains hosted within the United States. This approach reduced the risk of raising suspicion, as communication with foreign servers might have triggered security alerts within the targeted organizations. By using domestic domains, the attackers effectively blended into typical network traffic patterns. Another technique was the use of golden SAML attacks, an uncommon method prior to this breach. In this approach, the attackers exploited the Security Assertion Markup Language (SAML) authentication protocol by forging authentication tokens that appeared valid. This enabled them to impersonate any user within the compromised system and bypass multi-factor authentication. As a result, the attackers could gain elevated privileges and access critical resources without restrictions. To minimize the risk of detection, the attackers primarily used manual actions instead of automated tools or scripts, which often leave identifiable traces detectable by forensic tools. By conducting manual operations known as hands-on keyboard activity, they avoided triggering automated alarms. This methodical approach enabled them to move through systems discreetly, escalate privileges, and extract data without alerting the victims. These evasion techniques demonstrate the skill and precision of the Solarwinds attackers, allowing them to remain undetected for a prolonged period, even while targeting highly security-focused organizations. In response, FireEye, Microsoft, and GoDaddy, a leading domain registry and DNS management company, developed a kill switch to disable Sunburst. They manipulated DNS responses to route communications to a controlled Microsoft IP range, triggering the malware's self-disable function. The investigation continues to reveal new details, but significant questions remain unanswered, including the exact method the attackers used to initially infiltrate Solarwinds. One theory points to a 2019 discovery of a Solarwinds file server secured with the weak password Solarwinds 123. Reportedly in use since 2017. While unconfirmed, this example underscores the potential for basic security oversights even within organizations dedicated to cybersecurity.
So, Mr. Ramakrishna, reclaiming my time. I've got a stronger password than Solarwinds 123 to stop my kids from watching too much YouTube on their iPad. You and your company were supposed to be preventing the Russians from reading Defense Department email.
The attack targeted prominent clients, including 425 US Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and critical infrastructure. Its scale and impact highlight the complexity of the operation and leave unanswered questions about the breach's full scope, questions that may take years to fully resolve. On January 5, 2021, the CISA, FBI, NSA, and ODNI collectively declared that the Solarwinds attack was likely of Russian origin. Later, on April 15, 2021, the Biden administration officially attributed the hack to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, SVR, expressing high confidence in this conclusion. In response, the US announced new sanctions, citing the Solarwinds breach along with other disputes with Russia. And these measures targeted technology firms suspected of aiding Russian intelligence and advised against working with organizations storing user data in Russia or relying on Russian technical support. President Biden commented on his discussion with President Vladimir Putin, saying, "I was clear with President Putin that we could have gone further, but I chose to be proportionate." Meanwhile, Russia denied any involvement, with the SVR's director dismissing the allegations as a bad detective novel. Despite these denials, US officials asserted that the attack reflected established patterns of Russian cyber intelligence activity. In response to the sanctions, Russia threatened retaliatory measures, further raising tensions. Although Russia's involvement is still debated, nation-state cyber attacks like Solarwinds highlight significant risks. In a world where data and information hold power comparable to traditional weaponry, such breaches are deeply concerning. Fortunately, the Solarwinds attack was primarily focused on espionage rather than sabotage. If the attackers had chosen a more destructive path, the consequences could have been devastating. The attack's impact extended beyond Solarwinds itself. Security firms like Malwarebytes and Mimecast, despite having no direct connection to the Orion platform, also reported breaches, potentially tied to compromises within Microsoft. This fallout underscores a troubling reality. Even robust cybersecurity measures may not be sufficient. The widespread reliance on third-party vendors, essential to modern operations, introduces vulnerabilities that organizations cannot fully control. It's been over 4 years since the Solarwinds hack, yet its ripple effects continue to shape cybersecurity practices and regulatory actions. On October 22, 2024, the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) announced settlements with 4 technology companies: Avaya Holdings, Checkpoint Software Technologies, Mimecast, and Unisys, over allegations of misleading disclosures related to the Solarwinds hack. The SEC argued that these firms understated the risks and impacts of the breach in their communications with stakeholders. While none of the companies admitted wrongdoing, they agreed to fines ranging from $1 million to $4 million. The SEC also pursued legal action against Solarwinds and its Chief Information Security Officer, Tim Brown, accusing them of misrepresenting cybersecurity risks prior to the 2020 breach and failing to adequately disclose them afterward. In July 2024, a federal judge dismissed parts of the case related to post-attack disclosures, calling those claims speculative. However, the lawsuit continues over allegations tied to pre-breach cybersecurity representations. Despite efforts to improve security, vulnerabilities remain. In November 2024, a critical flaw, CVE 2024-28987, was discovered in Solarwinds helpdesk software, which could allow remote access to systems. While a hotfix was issued in August, reports confirm the vulnerability has been exploited in the wild, highlighting the persistent challenges of securing software supply chains. The Solarwinds attack serves as a reminder of the vulnerabilities in our interconnected world. As we uncover more about this breach, the question remains: what steps can we take to prevent such events from shaping our future? Did you experience this incident? If you found value in this breakdown, share, like, and subscribe for more in-depth documentary-style cyber events that shape our digital world.